They laughed at his crazy chimneys, until a death-cold night proved the Navy SEAL and his dog were the only ones prepared. A brutal winter slammed into the Rockies, freezing homes solid and pushing families to the edge. But high on a ridge, one cabin glowed warm in every corner, thanks to a former SEAL and his loyal dog, who refused to accept that cold should ever win. What he built would change the whole valley. The cold came in fast, sliding across the Red Rock Range like a silent predator. Cole Harrison felt it before he saw it. The way the air thinned, the way the pines stiffened, the way Valor, his German shepherd and closest companion, lifted his head from the porch boards and stared into the tree line as if the temperature itself were stalking them. Cole stepped outside with his coffee steaming in the brittle air. Night still clung to the valley, and the wind carried a razor's edge. His cabin sat alone on a plateau overlooking miles of untouched wilderness, a place he had chosen precisely because it asked nothing of him. No people, no noise, no questions, just quiet. The kind of quiet he thought might finally give him room to breathe after a decade of deployments. But peace, he'd learned, was never guaranteed, not even in the mountains. Behind him, Valor padded out, paws soft on the snow-crusted boards. The dog pressed against Cole's leg and scanned the frost-tipped ridges like he was still walking point on a mission. Cole rested a hand on the dog's head, not petting, just grounding himself. "Storm's rolling in," he muttered. Valor didn't need to be told. His ears angled toward the west, where clouds were stacking like dark boulders. They went inside as the wind stiffened. Cole shut the heavy cedar door and fed the fire, watching the fresh wood catch and bloom. Flames climbed, casting warm ripples against the log walls. The scent of pine resin filled the room, familiar and comforting. For a moment, Cole allowed himself to settle into the armchair by the hearth. Valor circled twice and lay beside him, but only for a breath. Then he stood again, pacing the perimeter of the room, agitated by something Cole couldn't yet name. "Easy, boy," Cole said, but Valor didn't lie down. The wind slammed the cabin with a howl, and Cole felt the temperature drop like someone had cracked open the sky. He wrapped himself in a flannel blanket and leaned toward the fire. Heat poured over his chest, warm and steady, but when he shifted back, just a foot or two, cold slapped hard across his spine. Cole paused. That wasn't normal. Not here. Not with the fire burning this strong. He stood, moving slowly across the room. The warmth faded with every step, peeling away in layers until he reached the far corner where his boots were stored. The air there hung like ice water. He reached out and touched the wall, cold enough to sting. A memory flickered. Desert nights in Afghanistan where temperatures plunged with no warning, and the cold always settled where the light didn't reach. Valor padded to his side, whining low. He pawed the corner and backed away quickly, tail tucked. The dog refused to sit, refused even to step closer. Cole knelt. "What's wrong, buddy?" Valor didn't answer with sound, but with his body, rigid, uneasy, head turning between the fire and the frozen corner, as if connecting dots Cole hadn't yet seen. He rose and crossed back toward the hearth. In seconds, heat wrapped him again, strong and comforting, like stepping into a sunbeam. But behind him, the cold clung to the wall like a living thing. A line formed between Cole's brows. "That doesn't make sense," he said quietly. The wind beat at the roof. Snow whipped sideways across the window. The storm spread its claws over the mountains, burying light and sound. Cole added more wood, stirring the fire until it roared. For a few minutes, the cabin glowed warm. Then he stepped back again, and once more, the cold swallowed him whole. Valor barked sharply. Cole felt the hair rise on his arms. Something was wrong with this cabin. Not just the storm, not just the draft. Something deeper, hidden in the way heat lived and died in the space. He scanned the room, eyes narrowing with the slow, methodical instinct of a man who once survived by noticing details others missed. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long in the corners. Frost traced the edges of the logs from the inside. "Why is it freezing in here?" Cole murmured. A crack of thunder rattled the windows. Valor stood rigid, staring again at the far corner, the one even the fire couldn't reach. Cole's breath smoked in the air. Inside the cabin. Inside. He swallowed hard. A strange tightness crept into his chest. The same pressure he used to feel right before a mission when he sensed something he couldn't yet explain. This wasn't just a cold night. This was something else. Something dangerous. And as the storm raged outside, Cole Harrison realized he was no longer certain the danger was out there at all. It might be inside, with him, and it had been waiting in the corners. The storm didn't let up overnight. It pressed against the cabin like a living thing, rattling the shutters and moaning through the eaves. Cole barely slept. Every time he drifted off, a sudden blast of cold crept across the room and jolted him awake. Valor stayed close, pacing, whining softly, then sitting at the edge of the fire's glow, as if guarding against something unseen. By dawn, the storm had carved a world of white outside the windows. Inside, the cabin felt divided, half warm, half bitter cold. Cole stretched stiffly and checked the fire, stirring the coals until they glowed and flames climbed again. Then he remembered. Mason, his buddy from Basic, a man who had shown up 3 days ago looking worn down, needing a place to breathe after losing his job in Denver. The plan had been simple: stay a few nights, ride out the storm, talk about old days. Mason had been sleeping in the far corner, wrapped tight in thick blankets. Cole rose, rubbing the back of his neck. "Let's check on him, Valor." He stepped across the room, expecting to see Mason sitting up, complaining about the cold or asking for coffee. But the closer Cole got, the more wrong it felt. The air thickened with frost. The logs in the corner glistened with a thin sheet of ice. Valor stopped short, ears pinned back. He whimpered once, low and worried. Cole crouched beside Mason's sleeping bag. "Mason?" he said softly. "Hey, man, wake up." No movement. Something inside Cole tightened. He reached out and touched Mason's shoulder. Stone cold. Not just cold from the night, but cold in a way that told a story all its own. Cole drew back slowly, breath catching in his throat. "No. No, no." He pressed 2 fingers to Mason's neck, then to his wrist. Nothing. No warmth. No pulse. His skin felt like a forgotten piece of winter. For a few seconds, Cole just knelt there, the wind howling behind him, feeling his heartbeat pound against a growing hollowness inside his chest. He had seen death before, too many times. Teammates, civilians, people caught in the wrong place at the wrong moment. But this was different. Mason hadn't died in combat, or from an accident. He'd died 16 feet from a burning fire. Valor whined again, stepping back, tail tucked. He refused to come closer than a few feet from the corner, staring not at Mason, but at the wall behind him, as if the cold itself frightened him. Cole swallowed hard, grief rising like a tide he couldn't stop. "Buddy, I'm so sorry," he whispered to the still form. His mind spiraled. The helplessness felt too familiar. He'd held men as they slipped away overseas, unable to stop the bleeding, unable to change what was already written. Mason's stillness dragged all those memories back, fast, sharp, unforgiving. Cole pressed his palms to his eyes, steadying himself. He forced his breathing slow. "Think," he told himself. Think like you were trained. He scanned the corner. Frost clung to the logs inside the cabin. Even with the fire roaring behind him, this pocket of the room sat at a temperature closer to the outside than the inside. He could feel the cold seeping through his jeans, cutting straight to the bone. "How?" he muttered. "How is it this cold in here?" He looked to the fire. Flames standing tall, wood crackling. Then back to the corner, air unmoving, frozen stiff. Valor stepped in front of him, protective, as if sensing Cole's unraveling state. "I should have checked on him," Cole whispered. "I should have—" He couldn't finish. Guilt swallowed the rest. He reached out and gently pulled Mason's blankets up, covering him out of respect. The cabin felt smaller now, quieter. The warmth near the fire no longer comforting, just mocking the cold that had taken his friend. Cole stood, jaw clenched, and walked back toward the hearth. "This shouldn't have happened," he said under his breath. "Not in my cabin. Not with a fire burning." Valor nudged his leg, leaning his weight into Cole, offering silent loyalty. Cole rested a hand on the dog's head. "I won't let it happen again," he said softly, voice low but steady. "Not to anyone. Not to you. Not to me." He stared into the flames, their light dancing across his face, reflecting in his eyes like a promise. Something was wrong with this cabin. Something he refused to ignore. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a new storm had begun inside Cole Harrison. A storm made of guilt, determination, and a single, relentless question. Why had warmth lived in one place, and death waited in another? That question followed Cole like a shadow. Even as the storm eased later that afternoon, the cold inside the cabin refused to behave like anything natural. Cole couldn't leave Mason the way he'd found him. He gently moved his friend's body to the small back room, a place where the air felt neutral, not warm, not freezing. Valor walked beside him the entire time, quiet, alert, watching Cole's face for cues. When the door shut softly behind them, Cole stood in the center of the cabin, staring at the fire as it threw bright orange reflections across the log walls. The warmth was real. He could feel it against his skin. But it ended abruptly, like an invisible line cutting the cabin in half. Cole took a slow breath. "All right," he murmured. "If the mountain's hiding something, we're going to find it." Valor tilted his head, ears forward. Cole grabbed his field notebook from a shelf. Its pages were worn, filled with scribbled coordinates from past missions, survival notes, and the occasional quiet thought he'd never say out loud. Today, he flipped to a blank page. He wrote one word. Why? Then, with a look toward the far corner where Frost still clung inside the cabin, he began. He started the way he'd been trained. Observe, test, measure. Even if this was a cabin and not a battlefield, the enemy was the same, the unknown. He filled 4 metal cups with water. 2 he placed near the fire. 2 he placed in the opposing corners, including the one where Mason had slept. Valor followed him from place to place, pacing behind him like a silent assistant. Cole returned to the hearth and watched. The fire crackled. Snowmelt dripped from Valor's fur onto the floor, each drop freezing almost instantly in the cold zone. Cole's eyes narrowed. That shouldn't happen inside. Within minutes, the water near the fire remained liquid, but the cups in the corners, they began to frost over. One froze completely. The other formed thin ice along the surface. Cole let out a low whistle. 15 feet apart, he whispered, and we're dealing with 2 different climates. Valor barked once, sharp. Cole didn't know if the dog understood the stakes, but he felt the concern in Valor's posture. Tense, watchful, tail low. Cole pulled the cups back and jotted down his observations. Then he examined the logs themselves. The wall behind the fire felt warm when he pressed his palm against it, heat traveling naturally through the wood. But the far corner wall felt like a block of ice, pulling warmth straight out of his skin. "Heat's not moving," Cole muttered. "It's rising, getting trapped above the fire, never reaching the corners." He stepped back and looked upward. Directly above the fire, a pocket of warm air shimmered. He could almost see it moving. But the ceiling above the cold corners held frost, tiny crystals shining in the weak daylight. This cabin wasn't failing because of the fire. It was failing because it was built like a dozen others in the region, without considering how heat actually behaved in a confined space like this. Valor brushed against Cole's leg. Cole knelt and scratched behind the dog's ears, grounding himself. "The old builders didn't think about this," he said. "Corners don't get radiant heat. Fire pulls air upward, not outward." Valor nudged the notebook with his nose. "Yeah," Cole said. "Let's write it down." Hours passed. The cabin dimmed as the storm clouds thickened outside again. Cole made notes on airflow, pressure changes, and temperature gradients. He held strips of lightweight fabric in various places to watch how air currents moved. Near the fire, the strip fluttered gently. In the cold corner, it didn't move at all. The air there was dead, heavy. Valor growled softly at that corner, as if the stagnant air itself bothered him. By evening, Cole had sketches, data points, and a map of the cabin's airflow behavior. He stared at it all, exhaustion tugging at him, but a familiar fire burned behind his eyes. It felt like the early days of SEAL training, where you had nothing but instinct, discipline, and will to push you forward. The job wasn't to be comfortable. The job was to solve the problem standing between you and survival. Cole stood, stretching stiff muscles. "All right," he said. "We know what's happening. Now we figure out how to fix it." He walked to the door, cracked it open, and let the frozen air slap him in the face. The storm had calmed for now, but the sky remained pale and heavy. More cold was coming. Valor pressed close to him, body warm against his leg. Cole closed the door and looked around the cabin. Really looked. The fire, the corners, the logs, the chimney, the ceiling. A puzzle with pieces scattered everywhere. A memory slid through his mind. Night raids where the team had to read airflow inside compounds before breaching, using the way sand drifted or curtains moved to predict where heat or smoke would go. That old instinct stirred in his chest now. "Air moves for a reason," he whispered. "Heat follows paths. We make the paths. We control the heat." Valor let out a soft chuff, tail wagging once. Cole grabbed his tools, tape measure, carpenter's pencil, and a dull chisel. He paced the room like a man surveying a battlefield, marking potential weaknesses, noting where heat rose and where it died. As he worked, the grief over Mason's death didn't fade, but it sharpened into purpose. He would turn this cabin into something safe, something better, something no one in Clearwater Bend had ever seen. And he wouldn't let another mouse die in a cold corner again. Cole stepped back to the fire, staring into the flames as they whispered and swayed. The SEAL in him, quiet for months, was awake again. And this time the mission wasn't thousands of miles away. It was right here, in the cabin he thought would protect him. And he wouldn't stop until he won. But even a SEAL couldn't fight the mountain alone. Cole needed supplies, wood sealant, metal sheeting, replacement tools, and he needed answers from people who had lived in this region longer than him. So the next morning, with the sky still bruised from the storm, he bundled up, strapped on his boots, and opened the cabin door. Valor trotted out first, nose to the wind, scanning the horizon. The snow was deep, but the air had softened. For the moment, the mountain had loosened its grip. "Come on, boy," Cole said. "Let's see what Clearwater Bend knows." The walk into town took over an hour. The trail wound through frost-covered pines, branches drooping under the weight of snow. Sunlight slipped between the trees in thin shards, glinting off ice like broken glass. Cole breathed in the cold, steadying himself. Each step reminded him what he carried: grief, guilt, determination. And each step made the mission feel more real. Clearwater Bend appeared through the trees like a postcard from another time, a small mountain town tucked against the ridge, chimneys smoking, wooden storefronts lined with ice. As Cole and Valor entered, a few locals glanced their way, recognizing the former SEAL who preferred solitude and rarely came off the mountain. Cole headed straight for the hardware store. Its faded sign, Roach's Supply Depot, creaked in the wind. Inside, heat blasted from an old heater, making the room feel almost tropical after the walk. Cindy Roach, a woman in her mid-50s with a sharp voice and sharper eyes, stood behind the counter. "Well, if it isn't our mystery man," she said. "Twice in 1 month? That's a record." Cole placed his gloves on the counter. "Need some materials." "Storm tear something off your roof?" she asked, half smirking. "No. Need parts for heat distribution. Airflow issues." Cole hesitated. "Corners freezing over." Cindy paused. Then she laughed, not cruelly, but dismissively. "Honey, that's every cabin in this valley. Corners freeze. That's life in the mountains." Valor growled softly. Cole rested a hand on the dog's back. "I lost someone because of it," Cole said quietly. Cindy's laughter faded. "I'm sorry to hear that. But look, that's why people stick close to the fire. Everyone knows cold pockets happen." Cole shook his head. "Doesn't have to be that way." From behind him, a new voice chimed in. "What's he rambling about now?" Cole turned to see Ron Mathers, his closest neighbor, about 2 miles down the slope. A tall man with a barrel chest, a red beard, and a reputation for knowing everything about mountain living. Behind Ron stood the Harper brothers, Jake and Wyatt, both loggers with arms thick as tree trunks. Ron eyed Valor warily before looking Cole up and down. "Heard you were building something strange up there. Something about splitting heat?" He chuckled. "What are you planning, Harrison? A fancy military bunker with central heating?" Jake Harper snorted. "4 chimneys, wasn't it? That's what Wyatt said he saw you hauling rock for." Cole kept his expression flat. "I'm working on something. Doesn't matter what you think." Ron leaned on the counter, grinning. "Oh, come on. We all know how cabins work. 1 fire, 1 chimney. Hasn't changed in 100 years. Cole's jaw clenched. "Then it's time it did." Wyatt elbowed his brother. "Hear that? We've got ourselves a mountain engineer." Cindy cleared her throat. "Boys, let the man buy his supplies." Ron shook his head, still smiling like someone who thought he'd won a joke. "Look, I'm sorry about what happened to your friend. Truly. But you're chasing something that ain't real. Heat doesn't just flow wherever you want it to." Cole stared at him. "You ever tested it?" Ron shrugged. "Ain't got to. Everyone knows it." Valor growled again. Low, steady. Not threatening, just warning. Cole felt something twist inside him. That same feeling he used to get overseas when someone dismissed a danger he'd already seen with his own eyes. "You call it overthinking," Cole said. "I call it making sure nobody else dies in a cold corner." The room fell quiet. Ron raised his hands. All right. No need to get tense. We're just trying to help you accept reality." He pointed a thumb toward Valor. "Maybe that dog of yours is giving you ideas." Valor took a step forward, hackles raised ever so slightly. Cole stepped between them. "Leave him out of it." Jake Harper picked up a box of nails, pretending to inspect it. "Look, we all respect what you did in the service, but mountain life ain't something you can out-train." Cold is cold. Fire is fire. Corners freeze. That's how cabins breathe. Cole exhaled slowly, containing the rising anger. Corners don't have to freeze, and fire can heat more than one place if you guide the air right. Ron let out one last laugh. Well, until you prove otherwise, I'm sticking to my one chimney. Cole paid for his supplies and turned to leave. As he pushed open the door, Cindy called after him softly, almost gently. Take care up there, Cole, and don't let this old mountain drive you crazy. He didn't answer. Outside, Valor pressed against his leg, sensing the tension radiating off him. As they walked back toward the trail, the sounds of laughter drifted from the store. Ron and the Harper brothers carrying on like they'd just heard the funniest story in the valley. But Cole didn't look back. Let them laugh, boy, he murmured, snow crunching under his boots. They don't know what we know. They didn't see what happened in that corner. Valor nudged Cole's hand with his nose. And we're going to fix it, Cole said, no matter what they think. As the cabin rose into view through the pines, smoke curling from its single chimney, Cole felt the weight of both the mountain and the mockery settle onto his shoulders. But beneath it all, something stronger burned, a quiet resolve, ignited by loss and sharpened by pride. The mountain might laugh now, but Cole would have the last word. By the time Cole and Valor reached the cabin again, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows that stretched across the snow like dark fingers. The wind carried a new bite, sharper than the morning chill, warning of another night of freezing temperatures. Cole unloaded the supplies, stacking them beside the woodpile, his breath hanging thick in the air. But his mind wasn't on tools, not on the neighbors, not on the mockery. It was on the corners that had killed Mason. Inside, the cabin greeted them with its strange duality. Warmth near the fire, cold swallowing the edges of the room. Cole lit the lantern and set it on the table, watching its faint glow flicker across the uneven air, as if the light itself struggled to cross the invisible boundary. Valor drifted across the room, nose down, sniffing every board, tail low. He stopped at the same two corners he had avoided since last night. A single low growl vibrated in his chest, not angry, just uneasy. I know, Cole whispered. Something's wrong with how heat moves in here. He knelt beside the corner, touching the wood. Ice crystals shimmered like tiny stars. He pulled his hand back quickly, fingers stinging. A foot away, the air was tolerable. A few feet more, comfortable. A perfect circle of warmth lived around the fire. The rest was death waiting to happen. Cole built another fire, stronger than before. Flames snapped upward, warming his face instantly. But when he stepped back, that same cold wall hit him. Valor barked once, sharp, urgent. What do you see? Cole asked. The dog turned and walked deliberately to the opposite corner, the one farthest from the door. He sniffed, growled again, and tapped the floorboards with one paw. Cole's eyes narrowed. That corner too? Valor barked louder, then ran to the fire, then back to the corner, connecting the 2 points like he was drawing a line only he could see. A memory burst through Cole's mind. Afghanistan. A makeshift shelter dug into the side of a hill. Narrow tunnels leading off from a central chamber. Cold pockets forming in dead-end spaces where air refused to flow. A young engineer explaining why heat gathered in some spots and died in others. Heat goes up, cold settles. If you don't move air, it becomes a trap. Cole froze. Not from cold, from recognition. Dead air, he murmured. Just like the bunkers. Valor barked again, tail stiff, waiting for Cole to catch up. Cole stepped back to the fire, watching the flames flick. Then he lifted a strip of fabric again, holding it near the ceiling. It fluttered above the fire. Strong movement. He moved it toward the corner. Nothing. A dead stillness. Air wasn't circulating at all. "This cabin's a box," Cole whispered. "Heat rises straight up, stays there, escapes through the roof. Corners never get any of it." He walked in a slow circle around the room, imagining lines of air, streams of heat. He pictured the bunkers with split airflow, channels built to guide warm air into safe zones. Then he looked at the chimney, then at the corners, then at the fire. Valor trotted to him, sitting neatly at his left side, the position he always took during training exercises. Cole felt the spark. Split the flow. The words left him before he realized. One fire feeding multiple exits radiating heat across the structure. A single system warming every corner. Valor wagged his tail once, sharply, as if confirming the thought. Cole knelt beside the dog, gripping his fur gently. "You saw it before I did. You knew the corners were dead zones." Valor pressed his forehead against Cole's chest, a quiet, steady gesture the dog used when he wanted Cole to focus. Cole inhaled deeply, steadying himself. That moment felt like the first ray of sun after a long night. He rose, pacing the cabin with renewed energy. "I'll need channels," he said. "Stonework, maybe metal lining. 4 chimneys, 1 in each corner. Not decorative, but functional. Split the smoke, split the heat. Give every corner a thermal source." Valor followed him step for step, matching his movements with practiced discipline. Cole stopped in the center of the cabin, turning slowly, imagining the blueprint forming in his mind. He saw tunnels beneath the floor. He saw stone columns rising in each corner. He saw heat radiating outward instead of upward. The idea was wild, complicated, backbreaking, exactly the kind of problem a SEAL was built for. He knelt again, cupping Valor's face in both hands. "We're going to fix this cabin, boy. We're going to fix every cabin in this valley." Valor licked Cole's wrist, sensing the shift in energy, the spark of hope replacing the dark heaviness of grief. Outside, the wind howled as the storm threatened to return. But inside, something had changed. The cabin no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a mission, a puzzle, a battlefield where Cole could win. Cole grabbed his notebook, flipping to a fresh page. His pencil scratched across the paper. Lines, channels, angles, airflow patterns. His handwriting was rough, hurried, but his mind was clear. "This is it," he whispered. "This is how we stop the corners from killing anyone else." Valor curled up beside him, eyes half closed but ears alert, guarding Cole as he drew late into the night. And for the first time since Mason's death, the cold no longer frightened Cole. Because now he had a plan, and a partner who had shown him the path. Cole woke before dawn the next morning, long before the sun brushed the tops of the Red Rock peaks. The cabin sat in a half-dark glow, the fire still pulsing softly from the embers he'd banked overnight. Valor slept beside the hearth, curled in a tight ball, but his eyes opened the moment Cole moved. The dog stretched, shook frost from his fur, and patted over with quiet confidence, as if he already knew today would be different. Cole looked around the cabin, feeling the weight of the coming work settle into his bones. "All right, boy," he murmured. "Let's get started." The plan was simple on paper, brutal in reality. 4 chimneys, 4 heat pillars, 1 firebox in the center, 4 channels splitting the smoke evenly. SEAL thinking. Mountain execution. He spent the early hours marking the floor with chalk, mapping pathways for the underground ducts. Valor followed him, nose brushing each line, tail giving small, approving swishes. By mid-morning, Cole had dug the first trench along the cabin floor, muscles burning, breath hanging in white puffs. The frozen earth fought him with every swing of the pickaxe. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Each strike was a promise. To Mason, to himself, to the valley. When he paused for the water, Valor nudged his knee, dropping a small stone at his feet. Cole chuckled faintly. You hauling building materials now? Valor barked once, proud. It should have been a moment of hope. But the mountain wasn't done testing him. Around noon, the crunch of footsteps echoed through the trees. Cole paused mid-swing. Valor growled low, ears pricked forward. A moment later, Ron Mathers stepped out from the forest edge, hands shoved into his coat pockets, his beard frosted from the wind. Behind him came the Harper brothers, Jake and Wyatt, each carrying a bundle of chopped wood. They stopped when they saw the trenches inside the cabin and the chalk lines spiderwebbing across the floor. Ron whistled. Well, I'll be damned. Folks said you were building something strange, but this... He shook his head, stepping inside with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never once questioned the way things were. You're really doing it. Cole wiped sweat from his brow. Work's got to be done. Wyatt laughed, hands on his hips. 4 chimneys? 4? Cole, you know how crazy that sounds? Jake chimed in, smirking. The corner of your cabin killed your friend. I'm sorry for that. But building 4 stone towers ain't gonna fight the cold. Cole swallowed hard, setting his jaw. You don't have to understand it. Just leave me to it. Ron leaned against the wall, eyeing the trench. You're digging under the floor now, too? That's not how cabins work, Harrison. Heat won't follow little tunnels just because you want it to. It's airflow, Cole replied, more sharply than he intended. Heat moves when you guide it. You split the smoke, each chimney radiates warmth. Ron cut him off with a laugh. Smoke doesn't split, buddy. It rises, straight up. Everybody knows that. Cole felt a tightness in his chest. Not anger, but the familiar frustration of trying to explain danger to people who had never lived through firefights, who had never needed to understand air movement to survive. Valor stepped between Cole and the men, hackles raised. Jake raised his hands. Easy, dog. Nobody's here to start trouble. Cole rested a calming hand on Valor's back. The dog relaxed but didn't back away. Ron squinted at the chalk marks. I'll say this, though. You've got determination. But this right here is wasted time. Winter's getting worse. You should be chopping wood, not living in a science project. Cole met his gaze evenly. This isn't for curiosity. Mason died because a corner froze harder than the outside air. I'm not letting that happen again. The room grew quiet. Even the Harpers sobered at that. But after a beat, Ron shook his head. Corners freeze, Cole. Always have. That's mountain life. Not anymore, Cole said. Not in my cabin. There was a weight in his voice that made Ron hesitate. Valor pressed closer to Cole, sensing the tension in the air, ready to act if needed. Finally, Ron sighed, as if dismissing the whole thing to avoid thinking too hard. Well, just don't get yourself buried alive in those trenches. Come on, boys. As they left, Jake muttered to Wyatt. Guy's losing it. 4 chimneys. Wyatt snorted. Next thing you know, he'll install 6. Their laughter drifted through the pines until the wind swallowed it. Cole closed his eyes for a long moment, letting the silence settle. Valor nudged his hand. Don't worry, Cole whispered. They laughed before every breakthrough in history. Valor barked once. Agreement. Cole returned to the trench, determination burning hotter than the fire crackling behind him. He dug until his hands stung and his breath came short. Valor fetched stones, branches, even small tools Cole dropped along the way. Hours passed. The sun slipped behind the ridge again. Lantern light replaced daylight. The cabin grew colder as the fire died low, but Cole didn't stop. Even when exhaustion pressed on his shoulders like a weight, even when the frost crept into the trenches, even when the echo of the neighbors' laughter tried to worm its way into his mind, he kept going, because he'd buried too many friends overseas, because he'd promised Mason he'd never let another man die on watch, because the mountain wasn't the only thing he was fighting. He was fighting his past, his guilt, his own mind. And as Valor curled beside him, guarding him from cold, from fatigue, from doubt, Cole knew he wasn't alone. Mocked or not, tired or not, believed or not, Cole was going to build something no one had ever seen, something that would teach the mountain to respect him. And when the cold came again, he and Valor would be ready. But readiness came at a cost. The next morning arrived bruised and gray. A heavy sky sagged over the Red Rock Range, threatening another storm. Cole stepped outside with Valor at his heel, breath curling in the frigid air. Snow had hardened overnight, crunching under his boots like breaking bone. "Storm's building again," Cole murmured. Valor's ears pricked. He sniffed the wind and let out a soft whine. Cole nodded. "Yeah, we need to work fast." He spent the morning hauling stones from the pile behind the cabin. The creek bed half a mile away had become their quarry, and every one of those stones carried weight beyond its size. Weight of purpose. Weight of promise. Valor trotted beside him, carrying smaller stones in his chest harness, each step deliberate on the icy ground. Inside, the cabin looked like a construction zone. Trenches cut across the floor. Makeshift braces held up joists. Tools lay scattered across the table. Plans covered the walls. Pencil marks, airflow diagrams, notes scribbled in the margins. Cole got to work laying the foundation stones for the first chimney pier. His gloves froze stiff, fingers aching from the cold. He could barely feel the chisel in his hands, but he forced himself to continue. "Precision," he whispered through clenched teeth. "If this fails, someone else dies." Valor barked once as if to remind him he wasn't alone. Hours passed. The temperature fell. A thin sheet of frost crept across the inside of the windows. Cole's breath fogged the air with every exhale. The mortar he mixed stiffened too quickly, forcing him to reheat the mixture near the fire. The wind howled outside, long, mournful notes that seeped into the cabin like ghosts. Cole pushed through, muscle memory guiding him as he placed each stone. One at a time, he told himself, just like clearing a room, step by step. Then a sudden, violent gust of wind slammed against the cabin. The door shuddered. Tools rattled on the table. Valor snapped to attention, ears forward, body rigid. Cole wiped sweat and frost from his brow. "Easy, boy. Just wind." But Valor didn't relax. The storm hit hard. Ice pellets hammered the roof, sounding like gravel flung from the sky. The temperature dropped so quickly, the air seemed to crackle. Cole barely had time to brace himself before the roof groaned under the pressure. A long, low creak echoed through the cabin, followed by a heavy thud. A support beam slipped out of place. Valor barked sharply, warning. Cole spun just as a crossbeam above the unfinished chimney shifted, loosened by the violent wind. It teetered, then dropped fast. Cole dove backward. Valor lunged forward. The dog slammed into Cole's side, knocking him out of the beam's path. The timber crashed onto the ground, splintering inches from where Cole would have been. Cole froze. Breath caught in his throat. Valor yelped. Cole scrambled up, heart pounding. "Valor! Hey, come here!" The dog tried to stand, but favored his front paw, lifting it gingerly off the floor. A soft whimper escaped him. "No," Cole whispered, dropping to his knees. "Not you, too." He examined the paw carefully. No break, no open wound, but swelling was already forming. Valor looked up at him, eyes bright but pained. "You saved my life," Cole said, voice thick. "You stupid, brave dog." Valor nudged Cole's chin with his nose, tail giving a faint wag. Cole wrapped Valor's paw with strips of cloth from an old shirt, tightening it gently. "You're off your feet," he said. "I mean it. No hauling stones, no running. You stay by the fire." Valor whined in protest. Cole set his jaw. "That's an order." The dog huffed but finally limped toward the hearth, settling down with a quiet sigh. Cole looked at the fallen beam, then at the half-built chimney. His hands shook, not from the cold, but from the realization of how close he'd come. "This storm isn't playing around," he muttered, "and neither can we." He hauled the beam aside and adjusted the wall braces. Every step felt heavier now. The cold seeped into his bones. His gloves were worn thin, fingers numb, but the clock kept ticking, and the mountain didn't care about exhaustion. So Cole kept building. He worked through the afternoon, through the rising storm, through the ache in his back and the sting in his hands. He laid stone after stone, forming the base of the first chimney. He carved channels beneath the floor, shaping tunnels that would carry smoke to each corner. By the time the sun disappeared behind the ridge, the cabin glowed orange again from the resurrected fire. The storm outside raged, rattling the cabin like an angry beast. Inside, Cole sank onto a stool, elbows on his knees, chest rising and falling with fatigue. Valor limped over and rested his head on Cole's lap. Cole stroked his fur slowly. "We came close today, buddy." Valor closed his eyes. "But we're not quitting. Not now. Not after everything." Cole looked around the room, at the trenches, the stones, the blueprint pinned to the wall. "We're getting through this winter," he whispered. "Together." Valor thumped his tail once in response. The storm roared louder, but inside, a seal and his dog sat beside a fire, refusing to surrender, refusing to let the cold win. And as the walls shook, Cole's resolve only hardened. This mountain hadn't seen a fight like this. Not yet. The storm raged through the night, but Cole didn't stop. He slept in short bursts, an hour here, half an hour there, then woke to add stones, adjust braces, and dig through frozen soil. His hands blistered. His knuckles cracked until they bled. Every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. But the chimneys rose. One in each corner, 4 stone pillars like sentinels watching over the cabin. Valor stayed near the fire, nursing his injured paw. But every time Cole looked his way, the dog lifted his head, alert, determined to stay part of the mission even if he couldn't carry stones anymore. Days blurred together, storms, frost, aching muscles, and the constant pressure of time pressing down on them like a weight. The cold deepened. Snow piled high against the cabin walls. The valley grew quiet except for the wind. Finally, after days that felt like weeks, Cole placed the last slate capstone on the 4th chimney. He stood back, chest heaving, covered in dust and frozen sweat, staring at the completed structure in disbelief. He had done it. 4 chimneys, 4 channels buried beneath the floor, each connected to a single central firebox. Valor limped over and sat beside him, leaning gently against Cole's leg. "It's time," Cole whispered. He walked to the center of the cabin where the firebox sat, stoned perfectly, lined with heat-resistant brick traded from a rancher miles down the valley. The opening looked small, but the design was precise, every angle intentional. A fire here wouldn't just burn, it would move. Cole grabbed a handful of kindling. Valor watched, tail thumping softly against the floor. "No more cold corners," Cole murmured as he placed the wood inside. "Not today." He struck the match. It flared to life instantly, bright as a star in the dim cabin. Cole touched it to the kindling. Flames licked upward, cautious at first, then hungry. The firebox warmed steadily, glowing orange within its stone walls. Cole and Valor stepped back. The flames crackled. Smoke gathered inside the box, swirling upward, curling toward the top, and then hesitating. Valor stiffened. Cole's breath caught. "Come on," he whispered. "Take the path." A long second passed, then another. Then, with a soft whoosh barely audible over the storm outside, the smoke split, cleanly, naturally, into 2 channels, then 3, then all 4. Valor barked in excitement. Cole felt his heart slam against his ribs. It's working. It's actually working. He rushed to the left corner chimney, placing a hand near the stone. It was still cold. He moved to the second, the same, the third, the fourth, all cold. But then, slowly, one chimney warmed beneath his palm, subtle but undeniable. Valor barked again, tail wagging. Cole hurried to the next chimney. Warmth, weak but growing. The third chimney followed, then the fourth. It wasn't a rush of heat. It was a swell, like warmth rising from the earth itself. He knelt beside Valor, pulling the dog into an embrace. "Buddy, we did it." But the true test wasn't the chimneys. It was the corners. Cole stood and walked toward the corner that had taken Mason's life, the place where ice clung year-round, the place Valor refused to sleep. He stepped cautiously, slowly, as if approaching the unknown. And the air changed. It wasn't warm, not yet, but it wasn't freezing. The deadly sting was gone. He stretched out his hand and touched the log wall. It was cold, but not life-stealing cold, not corner of winter cold. Valor limped over, sniffed the corner, and, after a long moment, lay down against the wall. Cole's knees buckled. Valor had never touched that corner. Not once. Not even when Mason was alive. Cole wiped a hand across his eyes. Relief hit him hard, washing over him like a tide he wasn't prepared for. He moved to the opposite corner. Warmth there too. Not the fire's warmth, but a steady, gentle heat radiating from the chimney behind it. The air felt equal, balanced. No more dead zones, no more invisible traps. For the first time since he built the cabin, it felt like a real home. And a safe one. Cole walked the entire perimeter, hand gliding across the walls, testing every board, every corner. The firebox burned low, steady, and every chimney pulsed warmth through the room. The system was working. The mountain's cold had finally met its match. Cole crouched beside Valor, burying his fingers in the dog's fur. "We did it," he said softly. "And Mason, if you can hear me, this one's for you." Valor rested his head on Cole's knee, eyes half closed, comforted by the warmth that now filled the cabin. Outside, snow continued to fall. Winds battered the walls. Winter roared like a beast. But inside, for the first time, it wasn't a threat. It was simply winter. Cole stoked the firebox once more, then sat beside Valor on the floor, listening to the crackling flames and the soft hum of heat moving evenly through the cabin. The fight wasn't over, he knew that. The storms would return. The cold would test him again. The neighbors still mocked him, and danger had a way of creeping into quiet valleys like Clearwater Bend. But tonight, Cole and Valor had won a battle that no one believed could be fought. They had brought warmth to the corners, and in the heart of winter, that was nothing short of a miracle. But miracles rarely go untested. 3 nights after the first successful burn, the cold over Red Rock Range took a violent turn. Weather radios across Colorado warned of an Arctic front colder than anything recorded in 20 years. The valley below Cole's cabin darkened under a bruised sky, and the wind rose with a ferocity that felt almost living. Cole stoked the central firebox, adjusting the split channels the way he had practiced. Valor rested beside the warmest chimney, his injured paw wrapped and healing. "Stay close to the fire tonight, buddy," Cole murmured. Valor lifted his head, sensing the storm coming long before Cole heard the first distant rumble. Then it arrived, an icy roar tearing across the ridge. The cabin trembled. Frost formed on the window glass instantly, like a white spiderweb stretching across the pane. Even the air outside seemed to scream. Cole checked the temperature gauge he kept near the door. -34 degrees F. the coldest he'd ever seen. But inside, the cabin remained warm, even, balanced. He walked from one corner to the other, hand brushing the logs. Warm, warm, warm. Valor trailed behind him, tail wagging, slow, steady, content. Cole exhaled in relief. "We did it," he whispered again. "This house finally works." But just as he turned back toward the firebox, Valor jerked upright, ears sharp, eyes fixed on the door. A sound cut through the storm, a cry, faint, broken, impossible to hear unless you lived your life listening for danger. Cole froze. Valor growled, stepping forward. The cry came again, closer this time, ragged and desperate. Cole threw on his coat. "Someone's out there!" He grabbed a lantern, swung open the door, and the storm slammed him like a wall. Snow blasted across his face, stealing his breath. Valor stayed at his side, shielding Cole from gusts as they pushed through the whiteout. Then, movement. A dark figure stumbling through knee-deep snow, collapsing every few steps. Cole rushed forward, Valor surging ahead. "Ron!" Cole shouted. The man collapsed again, and Cole caught him under the arms. Ron Mathers, proud, stubborn, dismissive Ron, looked up with eyes glazed from cold. Frost covered his beard. His breath came in shallow bursts. "Cole," he rasped. "Help, please." Valor latched gently onto Ron's coat sleeve, tugging to help pull him upright. "We've got you," Cole said, hauling Ron across the snow. They fought the wind together, Cole pulling, Valor dragging, Ron barely conscious. The lantern flickered wildly, its flames struggling to survive the storm's fury. When they finally reached the cabin, Cole kicked the door shut behind them. Warmth exploded around them like a blanket. Ron collapsed against the floorboards, gasping as his frozen clothes began to thaw. Valor licked his cheek, whining softly. Cole lowered him gently. "Ron, stay awake. Talk to me." Ron's teeth chattered violently. My wife," his voice cracked. "Cole, she's still back at the cabin. She fainted. Fire couldn't keep up. Wood, gone." Cole's blood ran cold. Ron's cabin was nearly 8 miles away. Valor barked, pacing anxiously toward the door. "No," Cole said, shaking his head at the dog. "Too cold, too far." But Valor didn't listen. He planted himself at the threshold and barked at Cole again, as if reminding him that they had once fought in worse conditions than this. Cole knelt in front of the dog, gripping his fur. "You saved me once already. I can't put you through." Valor turned, pressed his nose against Cole's hand, and let out a determined huff. The message was clear. Cole stood, heart pounding. He grabbed blankets, extra firewood, and emergency supplies. Then he strapped on his pack, tightened his gloves, and checked the central firebox to ensure it would continue burning for Ron. The chimneys pulsed warmth, steady as a heartbeat. "Ron," Cole said, kneeling beside him, "stay by that corner. It'll stay warm all night. I'm going to get her." Ron clutched Cole's arm weakly. "You'll never make it." Cole's eyes hardened. "Watch me." Valor barked once, sharp and ready, and together Cole and Valor plunged back into the storm. The world outside was a blinding ocean of white. Snow lashed against Cole's face. Wind tore through the trees, bending them like reeds. But he pressed on, Valor leading the way, nose low, following scents only he could understand. Step after step, mile after mile. The storm fought them with everything it had, but the seal and his dog didn't stop. They couldn't. A life depended on them. Hours later, covered in ice, breath burning in their lungs, they saw it. Ron's cabin, dark, still, frozen over like a tomb. Cole's heart lurched. "Please, let us be in time." Valor let out a desperate bark and sprinted ahead, and together they charged into the cold that had stolen too much already, determined to save whoever still waited inside. Ron's cabin appeared through the blizzard like a ghost swallowed in white. Snow nearly buried the lower windows. The roof sagged under a thick crust of ice. No light flickered inside. No smoke curled from the chimney. It was the kind of silence that didn't just feel empty. It felt wrong. Cole forced his legs forward, each step heavier than the last. The cold clawed at him, biting through layers of wool and canvas. His beard frosted over. His breath came in ragged bursts. But he pressed on, gripping the emergency lantern tight. Valor reached the door first, scraping at it with urgency. Paw, paw, bark, bark, pleading for Cole to hurry. "I'm here," Cole said, voice hoarse as he joined him. He shoved the door. It didn't budge, frozen solid. Cole backed up and threw his shoulder against it. Once. Twice. The third hit cracked the ice seal. He kicked hard beneath the handle. Wood splintered, and the door flew inward. A wave of frigid air spilled out, colder than anything he'd felt outside. Cole's stomach twisted. Inside the cabin, frost coated everything. Walls, tables, blankets. The fire pit was filled with nothing but gray ash. And there, near the hearth, lay Ron's wife, Amelia, curled on her side beneath a pile of blankets stiff with ice. "Amelia!" Cole dropped to his knees. Valor whimpered, nuzzling her unmoving hand. Cole touched her cheek. Cold. Too cold. But when he pressed 2 fingers gently against her neck, a faint pulse. Weak. But there. "She's alive," Cole breathed. Barely. He wrapped her tightly in 2 emergency blankets, rubbing her arms, avoiding direct heat on her skin. "Come on, Amelia. Stay with us." Her eyelids fluttered, but she didn't wake. Valor barked once, sharp and motivating, reminding Cole of the clock ticking against them. He lifted her carefully, bracing her head against his shoulder. She felt weightless, fragile. The blizzard screamed outside as Cole stepped through the broken doorway. Wind hammered his face. Snow blinded him. Valor pushed close to Cole's hip, steadying him with every step. 8 miles. In this storm. It felt impossible, but Valor forged ahead, searching for the warmest path, circling back when Cole stumbled, pressing against his knee like a guide rope made of fur and heart. Halfway up the trail, Cole lost his footing on an icy slope. He fell hard, Amelia cradled in his arms. Valor barked frantically, tugging the strap of Cole's pack, dragging him just enough to help him regain his footing. "Good boy. Good boy," Cole gasped, struggling upright. "We keep moving." The storm beat them mercilessly, but Valor refused to retreat. His paw, still swollen, left uneven tracks in the snow. Cole noticed the dog limping more heavily the farther they climbed. "Buddy, you don't have to." Valor barked sharply at him, as if scolding him for doubting. Cole nodded. "All right. We finish this." They reached the ridge after what felt like hours. The lantern flickered weakly. Cole's muscles screamed. Frost coated his eyelashes. Amelia's breathing was shallow but still there, each one a tiny victory. Then, through the white curtain of the storm, Cole saw it. His cabin. Golden light glowing from the windows. Smoke rising from all 4 chimneys like pillars of hope. Valor bolted ahead, barking triumphantly. Cole stumbled through the last stretch, feet numb, body shaking from exhaustion. When he reached the door, he nearly collapsed inside. Warmth washed over all 3 of them in a wave. He carried Amelia to the warmest corner, near the south chimney, and laid her gently on a pile of blankets. Valor curled at her feet, whining softly in worry. Cole moved quickly, working with practiced precision. He warmed water, checked Amelia's pulse again, used gentle, gradual techniques to raise her temperature. His hands moved like they had on countless medical missions. Calm, steady, sure. After several long minutes, Amelia's breathing deepened. She shivered hard, A good sign. Her eyes fluttered open. "Cole," she whispered, voice as thin as paper. "Is Ron?" "He's safe," Cole said. "He's here." As if summoned, Ron stirred from the corner where Cole had wrapped him earlier. He looked weak, but alive. When Ron realized who lay across the room, he tried to stand. "Amelia! My God! You saved!" His voice broke into a quiet sob as Cole helped him cross the room. Ron knelt beside his wife, taking her hand carefully in his. "Thank you," Ron whispered, tears freezing at the edges before they fell. "Cole, I misjudged you." Valor rested his head on Amelia's knee, tail thumping softly. Cole looked around his cabin, the warm walls, the humming chimneys, the corners vibrating with gentle heat. "You didn't misjudge me," Cole said softly. "You misjudged the cold." Ron nodded, overwhelmed. "Your system, it works. I've never felt heat like this." Cole sat slowly, exhausted. "Corners shouldn't kill people, Ron. Not anymore." Amelia managed a faint smile. "Your dog, he led you." Cole placed a hand on Valor's back. "He always does." The storm raged outside, but inside, safe, warm, alive, 3 people and 1 loyal K9 sat in the glow of a miracle system no one in Clearwater Bend had believed in. Until tonight. Tonight, it had saved a life. And tomorrow, the valley would hear the truth. Morning arrived slow and pale, sunlight struggling through a sky still heavy with winter's anger. Cole barely slept. He checked the fire through the night, monitored Amelia's breathing, tended to Ron's frostbitten fingers, and rubbed warmth back into Valor's injured paw. The cabin held steady, warm in every corner, exactly as he had built it to be. When Amelia finally sat up, wrapped in layers of Cole's blankets, she whispered, "I thought I wouldn't see morning." Cole offered her water, his voice calm and reassuring. "You were strong enough to hold on. We just helped you finish the fight." Ron sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. His eyes were red, but not from the cold. "Cole, I don't know how to thank you. If not for you and Valor," Valor thumped his tail, accepting the praise. "You don't owe me anything," Cole said quietly. "Just don't ignore the corners anymore." Ron let out a breath meant to be a laugh but came out as a shaky sob. "I won't. Not ever." Hours later, when the storm finally broke, Ron insisted on standing and walking outside. The fresh air hit him, and he looked around the cabin with new eyes. 4 chimneys, 4 warm corners, smoke curling upward like 4 steady lifelines. "Cole, this is genius," he said, awe in his voice. "I mocked you. I ran my mouth. And this cabin, your system, saved our lives." "It's not about pride," Cole replied. "It's about survival." Ron nodded slowly. "People need to know." Word spread faster than Cole expected. By the next afternoon, a small crowd gathered outside his cabin, neighbors wrapped in coats and scarves, faces pale from cold and sleepless nights. Jake and Wyatt Harper were there, looking humbled. Cindy Roach held a thermos in her gloved hands. A few ranchers from farther down the valley approached cautiously, recognizing Cole's cabin from the trail. Ron stood beside Cole, shoulder wrapped, voice steady. "Folks, we ran out of wood. Our fire couldn't keep up. Amelia passed out from the cold. I walked through a storm I had no business walking through." People murmured, eyes widening. Ron pointed at Cole's cabin. "But this man and this dog brought her back. She's alive because of what Cole built here, because his cabin doesn't freeze in the corners." Whispers cut through the crowd. "Is that true? 4 chimneys? Even heat? How's that possible? Can he build one for us?" Cole stepped forward. He wasn't one for speeches, but today wasn't about him. It was about ending the silent killer that had taken Mason and nearly taken Amelia. The cold doesn't kill evenly, he said. It traps itself in corners, in dead air. Your cabins aren't failing. They just weren't designed to move heat the right way. Cindy's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. But 4 chimneys? That's a lot of stone. It's work, Cole agreed. But it means every part of your home stays warm, not just the area next to the fire. Jake Harper scratched his beard. So you're saying one fire heats everything? With the right airflow, Cole said. Yes. Wyatt folded his arms, humbled. We were wrong to laugh at you, Cole. You were scared, Cole replied gently. People laugh at what they don't understand. Valor barked once, tail wagging as he trotted toward the crowd. Children knelt and hugged him. Adults stroked his fur carefully, reverently. Everyone knew the dog had crossed a blizzard to save Amelia. Ron lifted his voice again. Cole's willing to teach us. All of us. Cole blinked, surprised. I didn't say. Ron squeezed his shoulder. You will, because you know what's coming next winter. Because you've seen what the corners can do. Cole looked at Valor, who sat proudly beside him, as if waiting for Cole to do the right thing. Cole nodded. Anyone who wants to learn, I'll show you. Hope rippled through the crowd. Cindy stepped forward. Where do we start? First, Cole said, you map your airflow. Every house is different, but the corners are always the coldest. Valor will help. He knows where heat dies. Valor wagged his tail, accepting his new job with pride. Jake Harper chuckled softly. Guess the dog's the inspector now. He's smarter than most inspectors, Cole replied, smiling despite himself. Over the next week, the valley transformed. Cole walked from house to house, sometimes with Valor leading the way, finding the coldest points with eerie precision. Cole drew diagrams in snow, sketched plans on scrapwood, explained heat behavior in simple, practical terms. People listened, really listened. They cut trenches, stacked stone, built new chimneys under Cole's guidance. They rechecked older chimney lines, tested air movement, and sealed gaps that had stolen warmth for years. At night, Valor curled up by Cole's bedside, paw finally healing. Cole fell asleep exhausted but calm, his heart lighter than it had been in years. For once, his skills weren't used for war or loss. They were used to protect, to teach, to help a community stand stronger. And the valley changed. Cabins once known for freezing corners now glowed with warmth from end to end. Families slept without fear. Children played near walls that were warm to the touch. One morning, as Cole and Valor walked to check another home, a rancher tipped his hat. Thank you, Cole. You saved this valley. Another added, your dog saved us too. Valor barked, accepting the praise. Cole looked out across Clearwater Bend, chimneys smoking in harmony, homes keeping people safe, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not from duty, not from command, but from helping people survive the winter's bite. He looked at Valor. We did good, buddy. Valor leaned against his leg, eyes soft. The valley now trusted the system, and soon the whole region would hear of the cabins with 4 chimneys, the ones the seal and his dog built, the ones that kept every corner warm. Spring crept into Clearwater Bend slowly, like a fragile promise the mountain wasn't sure it wanted to keep. Snow melted off rooftops in steady drips, long shadows thinned, the valley breathed again, and with the thaw came visitors, travelers passing through, ranchers from neighboring counties, even a few curious builders who'd heard rumors of cabins that didn't freeze in the corners. Cole never sought recognition. He stayed on his ridge with Valor, fixing his tools, checking the chimneys, walking the perimeter of the home he had nearly died building. But the valley didn't forget. People stopped by with pies, with firewood, with fresh venison. They invited him to dinners at the community hall, asked Valor to lead their children on safe trails. For the first time in years, Cole accepted most invitations. Healing isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, like warmth spreading through a once-frozen cabin. One bright April morning, Cole and Valor climbed a small ridge overlooking Clearwater Bend. Below them sat the entire valley, dotted with cabins, each one different, each one personal, but nearly all with split chimneys now rising proudly from their corners. It was a sight Cole never expected to see. Chimneys glowing with morning light, smoke rising in perfect plumes, homes that no longer feared winter. Valor sat beside him, chest puffed out, ears high. "You did this too," Cole said, scratching the dog behind his ears. "Don't think I've forgotten." Valor nuzzled him in response. From their perch, they watched children running between snow patches, chasing each other with wooden sticks. A group passed a cabin, tapped its corner chimney, and Cole heard one boy shout, "That's one of the seal cabins! They never freeze!" The others gasped, awed. Cole exhaled, something warm settling in his chest. Pride, maybe, or peace. Later that afternoon, as Cole finished repairing a loose floorboard, a soft knock sounded at his door. Valor trotted over first. No bark, just a curious tilt of his head. Cole opened the door to find Amelia Mathers standing there with a small boy tugging at her skirt. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, her eyes bright with life again. "Cole," she said warmly, "we brought something for you." The boy stepped forward shyly, holding a hand-drawn picture. 4 tall chimneys, smoke swirling into the sky, and a big German shepherd sitting proudly beside a man who looked suspiciously like Cole. Valor barked once, tail wagging. Cole knelt to eye level with the boy. "You drew this?" The boy nodded quickly. "Dad says you and Valor saved the winter." Cole swallowed quietly. "Well, your dad helped too." "No," Amelia said softly. "You saved us, and you changed this valley. We're safer because of you." She hesitated, then added, "We want you to come to the town gathering next week. People want to thank you properly." Cole rubbed the back of his neck, the idea still uncomfortable, but Valor nudged him gently, urging him on. "Okay," Cole said. "We'll be there." As they left, the boy waved. "Bye, Valor," Valor barked happily, tail sweeping the floor. For the next week, Cole helped neighbors finish their spring repairs. Valor trotted beside him like an inspector with a badge, sniffing corners, checking airflow, ensuring each cabin passed his silent test. Families welcomed them with warm bread, stew, and gratitude spoken in soft, heartfelt words. The gathering came on a clear evening, lanterns hanging from tree branches, a long table set with simple mountain food, cornbread, roasted potatoes, smoked trout. People clapped when Cole arrived, and Valor received more affection than any dog in the valley's history. Ron stood to speak, voice firm but emotional. "Winter nearly took everything from us. But this man and his dog gave us a fighting chance. Cole, you didn't just save Amelia. You saved this community." The crowd murmured in agreement. "But more than that," Ron continued, "you reminded us that even when nature is strongest, good people can be stronger." Cole felt heat rise to his face. Valor pressed against his leg, anchoring him. When Ron sat down, Cindy Roach added, "Cole, if you ever want to build cabins full-time, you'd have more work than you could ever want." Jake Harper laughed. "And we'd help you this time. No more jokes." Even the mountain seemed quieter that night. The wind softened, as if granting Cole and Valor a moment of peace. Hours later, Cole and Valor walked home under a sky full of stars. The path gleamed with fresh frost, but the air wasn't bitter. Not like before. Not like the winter that nearly broke the valley. At the cabin, Cole leaned on the railing, looking out across Clearwater Bend. 4 chimney cabins dotted the landscape, each one standing tall against the cold. He whispered, "We changed something, buddy." Valor sat beside him, loyal, calm, eyes bright, watching the smoke rise from every corner of the valley. And Cole realized something he had forgotten for years. He wasn't alone. He wasn't broken. And winter no longer frightened him, because the corners that once froze now held warmth, hope, life. And it all began with a seal, his dog, and a mountain that finally learned to listen. If this story hit home for you, drop a simple 1 or 0 in the comments so I know you're out there pulling for courage and good neighbors. And if you've ever stood your ground to protect your home or your folks, I'd love to hear it. Stick around and hit subscribe if you want more real American stories about grit, justice, and the people who don't back down.